Well, I was born the youngest of three siblings in North Africa, a small country called Libya. My dad used to call me an idiot. So every day I'd wake up and I'd hear that I was called an idiot. But at the age of maybe 4 or 5, allegedly, my mum says, I turned round to her one day and I said, Mum, can I have a knife so I can stab Dad in the back and kill him? I was only 8 years old, and at the time James Bond was quite big. So I had a toy gun. Literally, my mum said to me, as she noticed they had this big queue where they were checking all the passengers' bags, said, you need to go to the toilet. And I thought, I don't need to go to the toilet. You mentioned that at the age of 26 onwards, your own personal development journey becomes one of the most powerful things that we have done.
Absolutely.
So if you're going to fall or fail forward. When you're down there, think about and look around, say, well, what can I do? What can I pick up and tidy up and improve things? So as you dust yourself off, you're contributing to that situation. It's all about connecting in with that individual. It's all about understanding that they probably spend more time at work than they do at home, but they still have a home life. How much do you know about your people? I think when it comes to growing business, you've always got to stop, test and measure.
Welcome to the Champion Mindset Collective podcast. Have you ever faced a challenge so overwhelming that you weren't sure how to navigate it? As a leader, the stakes are high, your reputation, your team, and your bottom line. And in times of adversity, the question isn't just how to survive, but how to thrive. That's where our next speaker, Elias Kanaris, with over 30 years of executive leadership experience, he has worked across corporate, non-profit, global industries, helping CEOs build high-performing teams, establish trust, and as a build business currency, and lead with resilience. He's coached hundreds of executives, chaired leadership groups, and led multi-international non-profit over 20,000 members across 20 countries. As a certified Maxwell leadership coach and a sought-after keynote speaker, he knows how to help leaders step into the toughest times. And when he's not in the boardroom or on stage, well, let's just say that his very interesting claim to fame. Elias smuggled a gun onto a plane at the age of 8. Please welcome Elias Kanaris to the Champion Mindset Collective podcast. Welcome, Elias.
Thank you, Anthony, and thank you for having me as a guest.
Oh, you're welcome. I want to start with that claim to fame. Tell us more about that.
Well, it is a claim to fame. Just a little sort of disclaimer here. It was a toy gun. I was only 8 years old and transitioning out of Libya in via Rome to Athens. And at the time, James Bond was quite big. So I had a toy gun. And literally my mum said to me, as she noticed they had this big queue where they were checking all the passengers' bags and things along those lines. And she said, you need to go to the toilet. And I thought, I don't need to go to the toilet. But she took me there to take the gun and hide it in the cistern of one of the toilets.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's probably still there if you go and look. But that's my claim to fame. I tried to smuggle it onto a plane, but it was taken off me.
Oh, wow. Or maybe they've serviced it and they've actually got rid of it. But wow. I mean, imagine if they found it.
Yeah, exactly. So it's, but that was back then. It's funny, I was 8 years old at the time. Times were different back then.
Yeah.
But were they different? It's probably the same today. We have to think about what we do, how we as leaders operate and act. And sometimes you have to make those personal sacrifices. Give up your toy so it's for the better good of the rest, and listen to the wisdom of grey hair. My mother at the time, she might have had grey hair back then. If she did, I probably gave it to her. You've got to then respect the fact that they've got some wisdom in, even though you as a leader or a follower might not understand the reasons, you've got to sometimes give something up for the better good of the community.
Yeah, and I like what you said there before about how you are, like being conscious, right, as a leader. Yeah, it's so important. Tell us a little bit more about your journey, like in life and as a child and leading up to this point.
Well, I was born the youngest of three siblings in North Africa, a small country called Libya. And when Colonel Gaddafi came to power, Uncle Mo, as we like to call him, we ended up having to leave the country. So I left Libya at the age of about 8, transitioned into the UK, where really I had to start again from scratch.
Wow.
So you're in a new culture, there's new language set, even though we spoke English, you have to adapt to being in London. You've got new culinary experiences, new friends you're meeting, and you're starting again. So really my education started back in the UK. I had to adapt and be resilient in a new environment and see how I could then thrive across there. And that took me through my education all the way through to my career and started a family there. And approximately 30 years ago, I left the UK and started again afresh here in New Zealand.
Wow.
So you've got to then say to yourself, wow, go to the other ends of the world, go and find out how to adapt in there and figure out again, when you know nobody, how to develop the relationships, how to work your way through. And trust me, whilst I might be successful today, I made many mistakes along the ways. And if I could go back and remedy them, I certainly would.
Yeah, we've all made mistakes in our lives, right? But they shape us into who we are today, and we learn as long as we learn from them.
Absolutely.
Yeah, exactly. So you've had an impressive career to date. You were the president of the Professional Speakers Association of New Zealand and the president of the Global Speakers Federation. Can you tell us a little bit more about your career and how it's led you to that position?
Yeah, it's been an exciting career, and the career path has taken some twists and turns along the way. I certainly would never have classified myself as a leader when I was growing up. In fact, when I look at my scholastic performance, I was at the bottom of my class all the way through school, high school, into university, just about scraping through. But one thing I guess I probably had to do at an early age, being the youngest, was understand how to connect with other people. And developing relationships has been a key pillar of my successes. When I came to New Zealand, I was fortunate enough to get a senior position working on a project for Telecom New Zealand. And through that experience in the contact center industry, I was able to go and connect with multiple groups, each fighting for what they believed was the leadership role in that sector. And even though they worked for the same organization, they were still battling as alpha males, let's say, to protect that position. So over the years, what I found was that I became the accidental president. And it wasn't my initial intention to become the president of the Professional Speaking Association here in New Zealand. But literally something happened to the incumbent. I was the deputy or the vice president. And they said to me, Elias, so-and-so's had to resign. Can you take the role over? And leadership is all about action. It's all about taking control, leading from the front. So I thought, you know what? I had planned that I was going to spend a year being trained, but now I'm just going to go full in, boots and all.
Deep end.
Absolutely. And work my way through.
Yeah.
But in that experience, I found myself surrounded by some of the best thought leaders around the world.
Yeah.
And that to me are people who are willing to invest in you and in me. And it taught me a lot about how to lead, to be able to say, well, great, how can I mentor the next person? How can I pass it on to the next generation? And that to me has been a large part of my success in leadership, is understanding relationships and understanding how to hand on to the next generation.
I believe it's so true. And I believe that, whatever we're blessed with, the skills, the knowledge, it's important that we share that, because if we're not, then we're being selfish.
100%.
Right? What is your superpower?
My superpower, crikey. I've got a mug from my kids. I don't know if I'm allowed to say, so I might edit this afterwards. But on this mug, it says, I fart. What's your superpower? So
I've got something similar.
Really? So that's not really the superpower you want to be known for. But I think the superpower is that relationship building that we were talking about before. Because when you look at it, when it comes from a leadership perspective, it's being able to allow people at all levels to buy into what you're doing. If you think of draw a circle and you put a dot in the middle, and you're that dot in the middle, and then you draw almost like a compass due north and put an N, and then down south, due south, and then east and west. And then you look at that and you say, that's you in the middle. And up north, it's your boss. Down below you, it's your direct reports. East and west is your peers. Then ask yourself the question, which out of these is the most difficult to lead? If I asked you, what would you say? Most people will probably say it's either your peers or your boss. But in fact, the most difficult person to lead
Is yourself.
Is yourself, absolutely. Yeah. So if we can understand how to lead ourselves, that's probably one of my superpowers, is to understand how to lead myself so I can then adapt to those and get them to buy into the ideas and the thinking. That's probably the one superpower I'd love to develop and continue to explore.
Yeah, absolutely. And, for me, that's been a journey since the age of 26 of, self-improvement and development to become the best version of myself. And it's hard to lead yourself when when things are popping up from your childhood.
Yeah.
And a lot of people are fearful of it, or a lot of people push it away. The only way is through it.
Yeah.
So you've got to feel your way through it, right? If you're in a dark hole or a dark place, you're going to feel your way, but you're going to keep moving forward, right? By the way, my mug says, I love my dad even though he farts.
Yeah.
What's your kryptonite?
My kryptonite, it's got to be my self-talk. And I think that when we see things, we often are very critical about ourselves. Yeah. And to me, if I go back through my history, when I was growing up, I remember having a situation where my dad used to call me an idiot. So every day I'd wake up and I'd hear that I was called an idiot. What I didn't realize is my dad used to call everybody an idiot. But at the age of maybe 4 or 5, allegedly, my mum says, I turned round to her one day and I said, Mum, can I have a knife so I can stab Dad in the back and kill him?
Wow.
Now, I don't know if that's a true story or a planted memory. My mother would certainly share the story often as I was growing up with anybody within earshot. So it made me think about how I was perceiving myself, this idiot, this fool, the dunce in the corner. And that's a kryptonite I think a lot of us have to deal with. How do we overcome our self-limiting beliefs? How do we talk to ourselves and drive it all forward? You mentioned that at the age of 26 onwards, your own personal development journey becomes one of the most powerful things that we have done.
Absolutely.
We've got to be working on the principle that you're either going to be green and growing or ripe and rotting.
Yeah, exactly.
So that personal development journey is one I've really pushed hard on and do on an ongoing, almost daily basis. Yeah. What can I do to improve myself? And when can I see the signs that kryptonite is starting to come into the picture and then work against that?
Yeah, no, absolutely true. And, if we're not growing, then it's like a brown stick. We're just dying, right? Yeah. And I heard this from Rob Dial, the mindset mentor, saying that, you can either do the easy stuff now and have the hard stuff later, or you can do the hard work now and have it easier later. And I definitely prefer to do the hard stuff now, because I want an easier life when I'm older, right? But also how you show up and how you interact with everyone. It's important that you're aware, you're conscious of what's going on in your life.
Yeah.
Right. And so you've obviously been on that journey, and, a lot of things have popped up for you and you've worked through that, just like I have. Yeah. So have there been many times in your career when you had to reinvent yourself?
Oh, Yeah, it's a great question. I think I've had to reinvent myself a number of times. Let's take the simple one, leaving Libya, going to the UK, or leaving the UK, coming to New Zealand. You have to reinvent yourself at different elements of your career or your life journey. Coming across here, I really had to think, what was I doing? How do I reestablish networks in New Zealand when you don't know anybody? So that was a major shift for me. In 2008, I made the shift of leaving the corporate world and getting involved in politics, where I was volunteering for a year with a political party contesting the 2008 general election. And when I finished that season, I then transitioned into my own business. So I had to reinvent myself from an employee to a business owner, and now celebrating 15 years in my own business has been quite a milestone. And I look at that and think to myself, at every turn, we are always reinventing ourselves. There's always these milestones where we have to change and shift. But then it's about applying what I've learned before, and then adding it and layering it on top of what I'm doing now. So if I give you an example, Anthony, if I was to count with you from 1 to 100, you go 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way up to 100. The next number is 100 and?
1.
Then 100 and?
2.
Okay, so then start again at 1, but at a higher level. So I think what we have to do is understand that as we reinvent ourselves, we've got that experience of 100, where we're starting again to establish trust with a group of people and coming in and working through at 1, at 2, at 3, but with the experience of 100 sitting on top of that.
Absolutely, and that fits in with that analogy. When you get to the top of every peak of a mountain, there's another mountain to climb.
Correct.
And you're at a different level, right? And so you might get to another level, but you're at the bottom of that level, and you've got to work your way up to that. Like yourself, I'm only 2 years into my own business. What advice would you give someone who's starting, like gone from corporate world and gone into their own business?
Great question to ask. So when I look at working through, I do a lot of work about building trust, and I've got this analogy about the word trust, and a little acrostic about that is the first T stands for transparency. So work through and be transparent about what it is you're trying to accomplish. So don't, it's very tempting, by the way, when you start your own business to say, hey, look, I can do that. No matter what is being offered to you, you'll turn around and say, I can do that because you want the revenue. But often, if you are true to yourself, you'd say, actually, that's not my skill set, but I know people who can. So that then comes to the R in trust, which is the ring of steel. And if you think about that, who is your ring of steel? Maybe some people call that your circle of influence. Who are the people who you can go to that either can be the people you refer for these activities, and you can clip the ticket, by the way, as you bring the opportunity to them, or you can bring them on board in terms of helping you grow your own mindset. Absolutely. So when you look at the ring of steel, it's probably the one area that I would focus in on to say, who are the people who are going to be guiding you in your infancy in this journey? And maybe that ring of steel will evolve over a period of time as you get better established. So you might need a different set of people in your inner circle who are going to be then growing you as you work your way through. But I'd probably say that out of the whole analogy, the ring of steel is one that I'd focus in on.
Yeah, absolutely. I've had that same experience where, there are certain things that I have no skill in. And, I've been reaching out to people and going, hey, you've got skills in this. Would you want to collaborate on this project? Because really it's just a project, right?
Yes.
And you work together and more heads in one and you get the right outcome. Certainly, like you said, you can clip the ticket on the way as well. What do you put down to a contributor of your success?
I think one of the things that I'll probably contribute now, if I was to pick 2 or 3 things in here, I'd probably say number 1 is consistency, being able to just go again and again and again. So if you're going to fall or fail forward And John Maxwell's written a great book about that, Failing Forward. And he says, when you're down there, think about and look around, say, well, what can I do? What can I pick up and tidy up and improve things? So as you dust yourself off, you're contributing to that situation. So I think that consistency becomes a large part of it. I think that consistency also in terms of learning and self-development, that's been a major, major contributor, especially in changing that mindset and that kryptonite we were talking about earlier on, being able to work my way through that and to drive it all forward. And then I probably turn around and say humility has got to be the third element, because with humility, you've got to be able to turn around and say, hey, I'm able to do so much, but not more. And at the end of the day, if you're able to recognize those around you who've made those contributions and not seek the spotlight yourself, that's a major contributor to a lot of successes going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. Consistency builds competency, and it builds confidence and motivation.
Yep.
Yeah, a lot of people are waiting for that motivation I'll do that when that happens, right? Unless you get up and take action and move forward, it's not going to happen.
No, not at all.
Yeah. So we have to take action. We must take action. So you now call yourself a fractional CEO. What is a fractional CEO, and what does a fractional CEO do?
So quite often I do refer to myself as a fractional CEO. Sometimes I say I'm a CEO as a service. So quite often an organization needs the leadership of the CEO to come in and operationally decide what's going to happen, how we're going to implement the strategies that the board will hand down. But unfortunately, especially here in New Zealand, we don't have the ability to have full-time CEOs in many organizations. So I come in as a fractional CEO where I'll be able to work on a part-time basis for those organizations and then apply all the governance type issues and experience into that organization. I'll often talk to an organization that has been operating like a club and need to transition into a professional body. So they'll hire me in to look at the governance issues, look at how we can implement that. Sometimes they'll bring me in to make the difficult decisions, because quite often you're going to have to sit there and release some people from the team and come back and review the strategies and figure out how do you apply that at a profitable basis going forward, and also introduce the right disciplines, and some of them are financial. How do we invest our money? What are the checks and balances in place? And do we have the governance that says that we are being accountable for how we invest our money? And I've come across some hair raising. I used to have hair until I pulled it all out. But honestly, some really hair-raising situations. You think to yourself, really, in this modern age, how do we operate like that?
So that must keep you quite busy in different organizations.
It is, and it's really good, because I think with most organizations, the way that I'm working now is to say, okay, you have a series of challenges ahead of you. Let's narrow those down to one or two that we can work on. And then let's put a timeline to then work together to deliver onto this. Often I'll say to the clients I'm working with, I can either give you pleasing methods or pleasing results. And I only offer pleasing results. So if you think about that, once we understand what is the problem, the issue we're trying to resolve, becomes easier for me to come in a fixed term contract to resolve that and to drive that all forward. Otherwise, you've got scope creep, and you can easily come in there and say, hey, look, I've only got 15 hours a week that I can dedicate to this project. And then suddenly they want 20 to 30 hours. And it's difficult to give them that while still maintaining other projects. So you've got to be very, very specific about the outcomes you're trying to deliver. And the more clarity you have at the beginning, the easier it is to deliver that over a fixed term contract.
Just to go a little bit deeper into what you said about sometimes it also means letting people go, right? And that happens a lot these days. And for me, it's happened many times. And in fact, 4 times. And The question I have is that how do you, because it'll be the leaders in those organizations that will be making the decisions, how do you guide those leaders? Because it must be hard for them to make difficult decisions, right? So how do you guide them to be able to show empathy to their staff? How do you go through that process?
Sometimes it's the leaders that have to leave. So quite often you're sitting there and you can see the problems at the top. And the challenge is to work with a board and to get them on board. I've been doing a lot of mentoring of CEOs, especially emerging CEOs. And often I talk about, say, within the contact center industry. When we look at the contact center industry, we were, as a senior consultant, going in, looking at a project that would either look at raising revenues or reducing costs. So you do an ROI based on one of those two outcomes. And once you've developed the ROI, you'd approve the project and deploy it. 6 months, 9 months later, you'd come back and 80% of the time, it would not deliver the results you're looking for. So when you analyze this, we came back and said, well, actually, there's 3 Ps involved in every implementation. First P relates to the product, usually hardware, software in our case. As long as it's fit for purpose, that should not hinder the project. No. But that product is useless unless you add the second P, which is the process. And you need to have a robust process that wraps around that product. And we've got business analysts that can come in and help us write the processes, which are important for every organization. So assume you've got good, robust process, you've got a fit-for-purpose product, leaves you with the last P. Well, it's for people.
People, of course.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, if the people don't buy into the process. So quite often I'll remind leaders that this is all about people. It's all about connecting in with that individual. It's all about understanding that they probably spend more time at work than they do at home, but they still have a home life. How much do you know about your people? How much do you know about their personal situation, whether they're married, have any kids, what their domestic situation is? Have they got an ailing elderly parent that they're looking after? All of these things, even down to which football team do they support? And even if they do support Manchester United and you support Arsenal, you still have something in common. Yeah. But it's about getting that people side sorted out. So it's about relationships, as we talked about at the beginning. How do you get people to understand that when you're making these hard decisions about releasing somebody, that you've given them an opportunity to shine? And that's a real challenge in the workforce today.
How do you identify your strengths and leverage them in the marketplace?
Well, we've all got access to tools like Strength Finders, which are great ones. And I often recommend that people run that for themselves. But the best way to really understand your strengths is to ask people around you, to get them to tell you what they see as your strengths. Because it's great that I'll answer a questionnaire, but there might be a level of bias in your answers. So quite often I'll turn around and seek that from my circle of influence, my inner circle, my ring of steel, because I want them to really tell me 360-degree review of myself, because they'll identify blind spots that I don't know about. And often you can think of yourself as being strong in one area, but that strength can be seen as a weakness in another area, depending on how you use it. And also understand that sometimes your strengths and your weaknesses can be counterintuitive in terms of where you use them. For example, at work, a strength is being direct, but at home, maybe that's a weakness, and you need to be more collaborative in the way that you address things. So it's about understanding even personality types and how they want to hear from you. Something like Ali Mooney, pressing the right buttons, talks so well about that as a type of personality where a powerful person will think about things, go straight to the point, whereas a precise wants time to think about things and needs more information to make a calculated and informed decision. So understanding your strengths is understanding how to read people, and that's something I can always improve on.
I think we all can, right? Yeah, we all can. What have you done that's helped you lift up your profile on LinkedIn?
I think within LinkedIn, it's important to understand that LinkedIn is an important platform from a business-to-business perspective. But the funniest thing is that I find the most engagement is when I share personal stories.
Yeah.
So within a personal story, you've got something in there that people can relate to. The biggest engagement I often get are when you mention a changing career path or something along those lines. I often see stories of people where you have somebody who says, oh, look, I'm walking past the pub, for argument's sake, and my initial intention was to carry on with this big walk, but I ended up going in there. And there's a photo of them with a pint of beer in their hand. And you think to yourself, well, it's a great story, but obviously a staged photo. And I've heard that if you can look at getting a story with somebody else involved, so something that you're doing, it might involve the Uber driver that you're with that morning, and they say something to you that's really impactful. I think to me, I've seen that has helped me in times in the past where I say to that individual, hey, that's a great story. Do you mind if I share this on LinkedIn? And then I'll ask their permission to take a photo with them and then share that story. So as you do that, you can work your way through. The other element that's really helped is to then have your ring of steel to also share and tag into those events, because as I'm sharing, they're commenting or they're reposting that. That's what helps you raise your profile, because suddenly the multiplication factor comes into being, and you have the power of saying it's not just my network, but yours multiplied by everybody else who's sharing these stories. And I think at the end of the day, you've got to turn around and genuinely get interested in other content.
Yeah.
Because if it's just all about me, then I'm sure that people start to see through that. But if they know that you care about others and you're adding value to their comments and their posts, that's where I think it's helped me the most.
Yeah. He can keep talking about and blowing your own trumpet, but you've got to really connect with others and share on theirs as well. I've heard you say before that there's power in network. What does that mean?
Well, I think that the network, you can just take the example of working in LinkedIn. LinkedIn is a very powerful network that you can leverage. So you might have 3,000 or 4,000 connections there, maybe even tens of thousands of connections. It's only useful if you know how to develop that network and to allow that to become organic. So sometimes you've got to go and identify what somebody else has done and tag them into your comments and use them as an example to drive things forward. But also, as I've learned myself, some of my colleagues have said, hey, Elias, I'm about to post something about this. Can you go in and reshare that or contribute to that conversation? And understanding how to network and use the network. So you can go, for example, business networking groups, whether it's a BNI or the gathering or something similar. You can turn up every single week. You can have your breakfast at your BNI and you can walk in and walk out. Are you building a network? Are you contributing to that network? No. So you've got to go beyond the network of the people I meet up with every day to how do I actively engage with that network? How do I add value to them by thinking about what they need and how I can help them achieve that? And that's the level of networking and developing the network that I refer to when I say that.
Well, that's really important. Yeah, absolutely. I've been in networking groups where people have said that, hey, I'm going to be posting something, please. Now I understand why.
Yeah.
When it comes to goal setting, how's that important?
Gosh, goal setting is probably one of the most important elements that we all have at our disposal. I remember growing up in the UK and goal setting was a very, very large part of my life and my business. And when you have goals you can focus on, it gives you that ability to figure out what should I be saying no to that will allow me to say yes to something else.
Mm.
If you don't have goals, if you're not aiming for something, you're going to hit anything. And that's the real challenge that we have ahead of us. For a long period of time, as I said, I used to set a lot of goals. And then life became really busy for me and I had a level of success. And soon I got out of that habit of setting goals. Recently, with the work we're doing at the gathering, we sit there and we work on what we call our 90-day action plans. So in the 90-day action plans, I'm going to identify just 5 SMART goals I'm working on. And I need to know what the next 90 days, I'm going to be working on 5 different things to help me get to my long-term, maybe 1 year or 2 year goal. And the importance behind this becomes more and more apparent, that you can then break that down from 90 days to 60 to 30 to the next week. And even though I might be working on 5 items, in my goals every week, I stay accountable to my accountability partner on just 3 things I want to do this week. Because the honest truth is your goal can be so big that you can have so many things to think about. Unless your goals can narrow down your focus, you're not going to accomplish anything.
Exactly.
And that's why, to me, since I got back into the habit about 18 months ago of figuring out these 90-day SMART goals, 5 SMART goals, it's become much more effective with my ability to say no to something, because saying yes to something else gets me closer to that goal.
Yeah. And I've applied the same in my journey as well, where, and when I was doing coaching, it was around what's your yearly goal? Let's break it down into quarterly, monthly, and weekly. And then also, what's one small thing you can do every single day that's going to contribute to your weekly, monthly, and quarterly goals and get you closer to your yearly goal. And, it's about that 1% every day. You only need to do that little 1% every day to get, and you're going to be 365% better at the end of the year. I agree completely with you. Setting those goals. For people who are struggling to set goals, what would you say to them?
I'd say start. And there are plenty of resources available that will help you understand how to set a SMART goal. So SMART goals, as we all know, is an acronym for specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time-bound.
Yeah.
So just even understanding how to set a SMART goal, as I said, plenty of resources on YouTube and the like where you can go and find out about that. But the second thing I'm going to encourage them to do is to find an accountability partner. That's so important, to turn around and say, it's all very well that we've set the goal, but unless somebody's keeping me accountable for progressing those 1%, that compounding 1% that you talk about on a daily basis has a massive effect if you work your way through. Now, we're all human. I know, contrary to popular belief, but if we are all human, we have that desire, I don't want to, I know, like going to the gym. It's too cold to get out of bed today. I'll go tomorrow. And unless you have an accountability partner that encourages you, did you go to the gym today? And says to you, hey, buddy, let's get out there. Let's go and go to the treadmill and use that for 20 minutes. Just the act of getting yourself out of bed and into that gym with an accountability partner that works through. Sometimes you have to pay money and they call that a personal trainer. But hey, if it's worth investing in that to help you achieve your long-term goal, it's got to be well worth it.
Absolutely. And here at the Crate, where we are working, we've got the 3 NNTs, the 3 non-negotiable tasks that we, every day that we say, okay, this is what I'm going to do. And before your head hits the pillow, you have made yourself accountable to all those people around you that you're going to do those. And I've found that really helpful. It's made me really conscious about what I've got to get done for that day, and everything else is secondary compared to what I've got to get done. And I've managed to get a lot done in the last 2 or 3 weeks, or 2 weeks or so that we've been doing this. So that I agree, having an accountability partner where you can, where they can keep you accountable and cheer you along. It's not just about like, hey, come on, we've got to do this, but it's like celebrating your wins together as well.
Yeah,
I think it's important as well. So what else have you been doing to help solidify your experience to use that to grow your business?
I think when it comes to growing business, you've always got to stop, test and measure. So often you'll sit there and you say, hey, this is my goal for my business to grow a number of customers, whatever the case may be. And then you think to yourself, okay, let's go and post onto LinkedIn, for example. How often have we started posting and then not stopped there to measure the effectiveness of whether or not the strategy is delivering the results? And I remember seeing a thought leader share at an event that I was at maybe a year or two ago, where he said, if you think about your pathway, you say, so I'm starting here, I want to go to that trajectory. And so if I just carry on all the way through, I can invest a lot of time and money to go there. But do I stop and reassess, is that the right place to go to? Because if it isn't, and it changes, I should be going here. You could save yourself a lot of time and money by stopping and testing that, measuring it. So then you can make an adjustment here and work your way through. Sometimes you can take a project and say to yourself, I want to start and test this out. But the investment ongoing, if you continue, could be thousands, not hundreds of thousands of dollars. But if you understand that actually this is going to fail and you pull the plug on it now, it's a difficult decision. No one wants to know that they're wrong, but sometimes the wisdom comes in being able to pull the plug early and stop something. And that, I think, is something that I've got to keep on doing all the time. Stop, test, measure, readjust.
Yeah. I saw something yesterday on, I think it was LinkedIn or Facebook, the dead horse theory.
Okay.
Right? Where the horse is dead, but you keep going, well, if we feed it, or if we do this, it might, come back to life. And it's like, if it's not working, then, you've got to learn to be able to adapt and pivot. And yeah, like you said, testing is so important to measure and see whether, if you've done a post on LinkedIn or Facebook or something like that, whether it's actually, connecting with people, and maybe the messaging might be right, or not the best, or look at, what can you do to improve that post. Storytelling is so important, and I had this conversation with someone, a CEO from Attention Seeker, Stanley Henry, and he was talking about how storytelling is so important. What is your opinion on that?
100%. Storytelling is the ultimate way of getting a message across. If you go back over history, some of the best orators have been storytellers. And when we look at it from the Professional Speaking Association's perspective, we think about how do we guide our thought leaders to become better storytellers? How do we guide them on a journey where we take our audience along with us? And even having a simple hook at the beginning of your story that attracts people's attention. We've got doom scrolling at the moment going on, where you're on Facebook or TikTok or whatever the application is, and you're seeing reel after reel, and then you're just flicking through. You've got just a short amount of time to grab their attention. Storytellers will grab the attention, whether it's written, whether it's image, or whether it's video. And you've got to be able to create that storytelling process. So it goes back to my comment earlier on. If you're in the Uber and your Uber driver said something with you and you say, wow, this would be a great thing to share, and you take that personal photo of you with the Uber driver, with their permission, you can then share the story out there. And people love to hear stories. Because if you think about this, when, those of us who've got kids or had to look after kids, when you're busy, tucking them into bed, and they're, 5, 6 years old, and they look at you and they say, Mummy, Daddy, Uncle, Auntie, they look up at you and they say, share some statistics. No, actually, they don't say that. They say, tell us a story.
Tell us a story, yeah.
Yeah. And I think we've got to understand that we've been hardwired to be sitting around that campfire sharing stories. So the more we can get better at sharing stories, the more we get better at connecting with people.
If we look at our life, it's full of stories, right? All our thoughts that we have, they're all stories that we are recalling. Tell us about the 9/11 experience. How did that affect you in this chapter of your life or your career?
9/11 happened obviously 23 years ago, almost 24 years ago now. And it started as an ordinary Tuesday. And that's the interesting situation. Every day starts as an ordinary day. And you never know what's going to happen until the day unfolds. The reality is that what 9/11 taught me is how do you handle yourself and your reactions? How do you start leading from the stop? Because 9/11, our world literally stopped in a heartbeat. We've got to understand how we take that opportunity of learning and apply it to the things today. So throughout 9/11, we learned probably three things. Number one is look after yourself first. It's okay to ask for help.
Yeah.
And today, especially with mental health issues, with the challenge of social media taking you down rabbit holes, you've got to be able to look after yourself. Second thing we learned that I'm applying today is to expand your network, look after others. Ask people who need help, how can I help you? And the third thing is to understand that you have to change the rules, because what we were doing pre-9/11 all changed. If you think about 9/11, the airline industry shut down overnight. Tourism in New York City evaporated. The speaking industry I was involved with closed. Sorry, did I say 9/11? Because I could have said global financial crisis. I could have said the earthquake in Christchurch, or the pandemic, Omicron, whatever it is. They're all part of the evolving landscape. It's going to change and affect what we're doing. So if we can expect that something's going to happen and then realize that as leaders, we've got to step up and lead from the stop. That's what I've learned about myself, is always expect the unexpected.
Yeah, be prepared to just step in and carry on.
Yeah.
Yeah, and not be a possum in headlights.
Correct.
But to be able to adapt to whatever situation's coming to you and have that resilience and to be able to go, it's okay, we can get through this. And, this too shall pass.
Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly. We're at the space now where I'm going to ask you 6 quick-fire questions. You can choose to answer that in a single word or a short sentence. The first question is, how do you define success, and has that definition changed for you over time?
Success is leadership. Everything rises and falls on leadership.
Who's been your greatest inspiration and why?
I'd have to say Jesus Christ has been my biggest inspiration, the ultimate storyteller.
What's something that you may believe, or you do believe, and others may disagree with?
Again, my faith. That's a large part of me, who I am, and not everybody believes in the same faith that I believe in.
If you could go back and give young Elias some advice, what would it be?
Hang on.
It's going to be a wild ride. What is one message that you'd like to share with the world?
I'd like to share that anything is possible. Just don't give up.
Yeah. Before I ask you the next question, I'd like to just explore through this whole journey in your life, even going through that 8-year-old in the plane, hiding the gun, or bring the gun in the plane. What's your mindset been like through this journey in life and through your career?
I think my mindset's been one of turmoil. When you look at the sort of almost like, how can I describe it? I suppose like a bird's nest. Everything seems to be intertwined, and sometimes you can feel quite dark, quite difficult. You have to understand that you've got to peel this out and take every single strand out one by one, and realize that each strand contributes towards the tapestry that's your life. But getting some clarity in there and understanding that you're still going to have some turmoil coming through. But if you have the right tools, you can work your way through that. But it's been a heck of a journey, and I'm still hanging on.
Good on you. It sounds like you've got the resilience and the right mindset to move forward. What does it mean to you to be a champion and to have a champion mindset?
I think to be a champion, you have to understand it's a team sport, and team sport requires collaboration with others. And sometimes you're going to have multiple leaders in that team. But when you're given the armband to lead, get up there and lead and show others through your actions.
Absolutely. And on that note, the listeners and the viewers, they may be going, hey, well, look, I could do with some help. And if they wanted to connect with you, how could they do that?
I think the easiest way to connect with me is probably on LinkedIn, Elias Kanaris. It's a relatively unique name, but reach out there and just reference the fact that you saw me in this podcast with Anthony, and then that way they can actually reach out to me. I'm more than happy to look at how we can work together.
Absolutely. We'll put the link in the show notes. And what would you say to people out there who are struggling as CEOs or emerging CEOs or leaders? One word that you would say to them?
Mentoring. Who is mentoring you?
Well, Elias, it's been an insightful interview and conversation, and we've navigated adversity. We've navigated lots of different aspects, and a lot of those I share as well. We all share the same things in life. So thank you so much for sharing your strategies and your insights. And I hope that you found this valuable. And if you'd like to connect with Elias, please click on the link that I'm going to put in the show notes. Mention that you saw this podcast episode, and he'll be able to work with you. And don't forget to subscribe to this podcast and share this with someone who may benefit from hearing the insights that we've shared on this podcast episode. Lastly, I just want to say you are loved, you are worthy, champion your life, champion your greatness, and have an amazing day.